Welcome to the Please Suck Less podcast, a podcast where one guy shares his views of where the fire service can improve. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to the Please Suck Less podcast. I'm your host, David Polikoff. By now, if you guys have been listening to this, you kind of understand the direction that I'm going. I just kind of pick out topics that have been on my mind, things that kind of make me wonder, why is the fire service heading this way, or why are these things happening? And this can be applied in everyday's life, businesses, not necessarily the fire department, but that's the arena that I live in. So what I like to do is just kind of throw those questions out there. Yeah, it may sound like a rant. These are things that are on my mind, things that I've heard over the last 34-year career, and as a volunteer and things like that. It's all the same. It doesn't matter if you get a paycheck or not. So one of the things I wanted to talk about today, or the thing that I want to talk about today, is morale. It's very easy to say, hey, morale's low in the fire service, or hey, morale's really low, or morale's at an all-time low in the fire service. This was something that happened back in Montgomery County, I'd say about 6 years ago, when I was a battalion chief. And I noticed some of my friends posting online about just kind of, pooping on the fire service, where you work in general. And as a, leader of the organization, or as a battalion chief, I started wondering why people were feeling this way. And it wasn't just one person. It was a handful of people. Comments made on Facebook, and then people agreeing and things like that. So I called one of my good friends that made a comment. And I asked him, what was going on, if he was okay, and, had something happened that I didn't hear about. He wasn't one of my employees or somebody that I was supervising, just a longtime friend of mine as a captain. And he kind of laid it out of some of the things that were really bothering him, things that were bothering his shift, that was coming down from senior staff, from people at headquarters and down. So that got me thinking, maybe as a battalion chief, and at the time I was working in 2 different battalions as a relief guy, I figured, I have at least a quarter of the employees through all 3 shifts that I could just kind of sit down and have a really candid conversation with the guys. So I had arranged the time with the captain to just come in. I usually made my rounds. I went to every station anyway, and just had everybody sit at the table. And I just kind of threw the question out there: do they think morale in the fire service is good or bad? And I wanted them to be honest with me and tell me, why, if they felt it was bad, why they felt it was bad. And if they said, no, morale's pretty good, I wanted them to tell me some of the things that they saw that they felt made morale good. So it was a really good conversation, and I took notes. I took a ton of notes. I ended up having probably about 8 pages of notes. And once it was all done, I took all my data, and what I did is I started going through every single bullet point of note that I took, and I made a list, and I got it down to about 8 different topics and where complaints or areas that they felt could improve. I put them all together. I made it into a list of about 6 pages of bullet points, and I gave it back to the captains, to the people that I talked to. And what I found out was, it didn't take long, as the way firemen are, and I should have maybe said, hold on to the list until I can talk to my immediate supervisor and just say, hey, here's some things that are going on in the fire service. And it got out, and the senior staff found out about it, and they were upset with me. And I had a few of them call me, and I said, hey, if you want to know my motive behind it, there was no, malice motive behind it, but it was more of, I just wanted to know what was going on. And as a leader in the organization, I think it's my responsibility to continuously take a pulse of what's going on with my people. If they're not happy about something, I want to know why. So when it was all said and done, I gave the list to the fire chief. I gave the list to my supervisor. All the senior staff had it. And I basically said, look, you can look at this list, and some of the things you can see are just complaints, and you can kind of write those off if they don't have any merit. But there was some accurate findings, some observations that the people on the floor had that I felt senior staff should take a look at. And I basically said, here's a blueprint to the mind of the captains, lieutenants, masters, and firefighters that are working on the floor of what they see the fire service as. Now, it's really easy being in a senior staff position to look at that and say, well, it's not like that at all. Maybe that's how an assistant chief or a deputy chief or even the fire chief sees the fire service, but seeing it through the eyes of a firefighter or a technician, master, lieutenant, or captain, even the battalion chief, is totally different. And if you fancy yourself a good leader, you have to be a good listener. And I basically said, here's a blueprint of what these guys are thinking, what they're feeling. It'd be real easy to just arrange a time to go and just sit down and meet and talk and find out what's going on. Communication is not something that we do very well in the fire service. I say that all the time. People that know me, they hear me say that all the time. We don't communicate like we should. Now in the position that I'm in, I feel it's necessary to communicate with the corporations, the chiefs and whatnot about what's going on, and if they have questions, to get answers for them. I feel that's my job. But when you want to dismiss what people are feeling, and not necessarily when I say feeling as in, they have, you hurt my feelings type thing, but more of what they feel is going on in the fire service or what might be wrong, you got to hear these people out. And maybe, just maybe, they would actually have solutions that don't cost any money, that's easy to implement, or maybe you could even put people in charge of making things, smoothing things out. So my advice to the any senior staff members out there, if you're a battalion chief or you're a deputy chief, an assistant chief or whatever, you have to get out and you have to listen to your people. You have to continually take a pulse, find out what's going on. My expectations are that all the captains and lieutenants every morning are having some type of lineup at the kitchen table, and they're physically talking to their people. They're looking at them, they're seeing them, making sure that they are in the right frame of mind to be productive on that shift. Make sure that there's not any outside forces that are going to distract them from doing their job. That's the responsibility of the lieutenants and captains. They have to physically be sitting down at the table during the morning briefing, and it's not necessarily just to talk about the apparatus and things that are going on, but it's also a chance to actually look at your people and find out what's going on. The same holds true with battalion chiefs. If you are a chief officer responsible for a battalion of people, you need to get in your car, you need to drive around to each station. I don't care if it's snowing, if it's raining, you need to have a conversation with the captains and the lieutenants, and then maybe even bring everybody to the table and just kind of shoot the shit. It's important to make that contact with your people and take it even a step further. Assistant chiefs, if you're an assistant chief of operations or you're in charge of an entire shift full of people, however many that are, you need to get in your vehicle. You need to pick a battalion, maybe one battalion a pay period, or maybe one battalion a week, and just make your rounds between those stations and talk to them and find out how are things going. Again, take a pulse, find out what's going on. Talk to the captains. You should be talking to the battalion chiefs. And deputy chiefs and the fire chief, your organization is not so big that you can't make contact with your people. If you're in a large organization, which makes it very difficult to be able to touch each person, we have social media that's out there, YouTube, things like that. Make a video, put the word out there of exactly what's going on in the organization. Allow people to ask questions, and then you can answer those questions. If your organization isn't like an FDNY or a big city department, you're in a suburban department, if they give you a vehicle as a chief officer to drive around in, you should be in that vehicle and go meet with your people. Find out what's going on. Take a pulse of the organization, because morale is everything. When people feel good when they come to work, if they feel confident and they're happy at coming to work, they're going to produce good work. If people are pissed, if they're mad, if there's underlying issues, if there's lack of communication, or even worse, if the senior staff is not honest or open or transparent with the people on the floor about what's going on in the direction of the department, you're going to have a really hard time getting buy-in and getting these people to perform at the peak level that you think that they should be performing in. So, to summarize everything, morale is everything. Yes, people bitch just to bitch. Line officers, lieutenants, and captains should be able to filter that stuff out and nip it in the bud. But for legitimate complaints, legitimate concerns, they need to be heard and they need to be pushed up the chain of command, and answers need to be given. Communication is the key in the fire service. Again, we don't do a good job at it. We need to do better at communicating with each other, letting everybody know what the direction of the department is. Senior staff, believe it or not, subordinates want to see the chiefs. They want you to come in. They want you to sit down and talk to them. They want to hear what's going on. They don't get to hear all the stuff that you're having meetings on up at headquarters. So get out there, talk to the people, let them know what's going on. That'll kill a whole bunch of rumors. Remember, if you don't put the truth out there, people are going to filter in their own truth. And a lot of times, that's not what you want to happen, because at that point, it's all rumor, gossips, and it's a bunch of bullshit. So get out there, talk to your people, take a pulse, see what's going on in the organization. You say you care about your people, prove it. So my advice, be better, do better, suck less. Thanks for listening to my rant.